A wolf soulmate romance written by Clara Nightshade. Prologue. A cursed witch. A broken wolf. A prophecy too old to trust and too dangerous to ignore. When Talia Fernbrooke accidentally ignites the divine spark of a long-dead goddess, she becomes the unwilling centerpiece of a prophecy that could destroy magic as the world knows it. As witches, werewolves, and crusading zealots clash, Talia must untangle truth from myth, love from duty, and power from fate itself. But the moon doesn't give gifts, it takes. And the mark she bears might not be a blessing, but a claim. Chapter 1. The Breadwitch of Miller's Hollow. There were exactly 3 things Talia Fernbrooke knew for certain about herself. 1. She was spectacularly bad at every form of magic that wasn't edible. To her, familiar Chech was a talking goose with a vendetta against jam. And 3. No matter how many protective wards she carved into her cottage's buttery walls, fate had it out for her. Moon's wrong eye, not again, Talia shrieked, dodging a flying clump of sticky dough that exploded against her rafters with a squelch. The spell had started as a minor charm, a bread fold binding, meant to seal a jar of herbs against pests. Instead, it had summoned an airborne army of honey-dry goblins, armed with cinnamon nubs. Chech, perched with regal disdain on the windowsill, flapped his wings in alarm. You've gone and conjured sentient starch again. We'll be ankle-deep in crouton insurgents if you don't cut it out. I'm trying, she snapped, flinging a counter-hex at a flailing goblin. It powered into breadcrumbs mid-air. I followed the incantation perfectly this time. Moon-aligned syllables, focused intent, even fresh sage. The floor of the cottage groaned beneath doughy feet. One goblin hooted something vaguely obscene in bread speak and launched a crust at her head. Talia ducked, and landed, face first, into her cauldron of mint apple stew. A moment of sizzling silence followed, then Chech cleared his throat. Might I suggest, dear witchling, that your special affinity for culinary enchantment should not include fermentation warfare? Talia spat out a leaf and groaned. Maybe I'm cursed. The goose stilted his head. You are cursed. Your moon marked, chaos bent, and divinely jinxed. It's in your aura. It's in your bread. She scowled, wiping stew from her nose. You always say that, and I'll keep saying it until you accept the truth. You're not just unlucky, you're a harbinger of ill omens. A walking calamity wrapped in pastry. The words stung more than she'd admit, because he wasn't wrong. No one in Miller's Hollow had ever made her feel normal. Even among witches, Talia was peculiar. She couldn't call down lunar fire or whisper to trees. Her powers involved conjuring muffins with misleading labels, and once accidentally birthing a sentient teapot. The townsfolk tolerated her, but they did so the way one tolerates a pet bear that sometimes eats the curtains. But tonight, the feeling of wrongness bloomed stronger. It was the Moon Watch Festival, a sacred time when witches across the valley lit floating lanterns and offered blessings to the night. An uneasy chill hung in the air, not weather, but something more primal. The animals were restless, shadows stretched a little too far, and in the sky, the moon had a second ring, faint and silver, like an eye watching from behind a veil. I'm not going, Talia muttered, scrubbing batter off her apron. Chech blinked. You're not going? To the most magically potent night of the season? I'll just mess it up. What if I bless someone's marriage and they turn into flan? Again, they were happily caramelized. Talia pointedly ignored him. She tugged a patchy cloak over hair and began cleaning. The glow in her fingers, faint and golden, flickered uneasily as she restored the wards around her pantry. The air buzzed with misfired magic. Then knock knock, 3 slow raps on the door. She froze. Her wards hissed and curled inward like frightened cats. No one visits this late, she whispered. Not on Moon Watch. Chech waddled to her side. Whoever it is, they've walked through consecrated ground, and the spirits haven't devoured them. That's not comforting. Another knock. Firmer. Talia moved toward the door and opened it a sliver. Outside stood 3 hooded figures, cloaked in silver-threaded robes, faces shadowed beneath bone masks. Moonlight clung to them like silk. Their hands were bare, etched with runes that shimmered faintly in the dark. One of them stepped forward. Are you Talia Fernbrooke? The voice was smooth, melodic and chilling. Talia's stomach flipped. Who's asking? The moon has sent us. She doesn't deliver mail, Talia muttered, already reaching for her bread knife wand. We felt your awakening. I'm not awake, just cooking. The divine mark burns in you. Do not deny it. And just like that, her left palm ignited not in flame, but in a shimmer of radiant silver light. A crescent moon unfurled itself beneath her skin like a rising tide. Her breath hitched. What the scown? The ground trembled. Her roof groaned. Lanterns outside exploded in arcs of starlight. Magic she hadn't summoned whipped through the air in concentric circles. The spirits of the hollow screamed in warning, and the masked figures bowed. "Hail," said the lead figure, "to the moon reborn." Talia slammed the door so hard it cracked. "Nope," she gasped. Nope. You saw that, right?" The goose stared at her deadpan. "Yes, you lit up like a celestial pastry. Congratulations." "I don't want congratulations. I want tea, and to not be glowing." "You're moon-marked witchling," Chech said, waddling in a slow circle. "And those were moon wardens. Sacred agents of the lunar accord. They don't just show up for biscuit casters, unless something divine is stirring." Talia clutched her palm. The light still pulsed softly beneath her skin, like moonlight underwater. She had always worn gloves during town gatherings. Now she knew why. "Maybe it's a mistake," she whispered. "Maybe the spell just backfired in a new way. Maybe I've got some rare fungus." Chech gave her a flat look. "You cannot fungus your way out of prophecy." The earth trembled again. Faint howls echoed beyond the hollow where the woods grew thick and wild. The lanterns across town flickered and died. Smoke curled into the air, not from her kitchen this time. Something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. "Talia," Chech said, his voice losing its usual sarcasm, "go pack. Now." "What? Why?" "Because that was not the moon's blessing alone. That mark? It's a summons. Every creature who serves the pantheon will sense it, including the ones who wish you dead. But the hollow will burn before dawn," he said gently. "And they'll blame you, as they always have." There was no time to argue. She stuffed a few herbs, her one knife, a bag of self-replenishing flour, and 2 loaves of misfired garlic bread still twitching slightly into her bag. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. Her chest ached with something like grief, but for what, she couldn't say. They slipped out the back just as the first screamed all through the village. From the hill above Miller's Hollow, Talia turned back. Her cottage had collapsed inward, not burned, but unwoven, as if the magic holding it together had come undone. Villagers ran. Moon wardens hovered on gusts of wind, robes glowing silver, but others moved among them, tall figures in crimson cloaks, with blades shaped like crescent moons. "They're here for you," Chech said softly. "Not to worship, to use." Talia sank to her knees, mouth open. "I didn't do this." "No," Chech agreed, "but they think you did. The Breadwitch, their unlucky goddess." By dawn, they were deep in the woods. The hollow was gone. Talia sat beside a half-frozen stream, exhausted, her cheeks smudged with ash. Her thoughts came fractured glowing hands, silver-robed cultists, bread goblins, prophecies. "Why me?" she asked aloud. "Because you were born on a moonless eclipse," Chech replied, hopping onto a log. "Because your magic is wild and othered, and refuses to obey even the basic principles of culinary dignity. And because the moon goddess, long ago, died with a curse on her lips that she would return in chaotic flesh to undo the chains of fate." Talia laughed, sharp and hollow. "So I'm a cosmic joke." No, the goose becked affectionately at her boot. "You're a wild card. Great. That's so comforting. You're not meant to be her. You are her, fragmented, reborn, tangled in flower and fear. But you don't have to be what they expect. That's your power." Talia closed her eyes. The river whispered to her, not with words, but memory. She saw a silver temple shattered by blood light. She saw herself, wearing a crown of bones, whispering secrets into a werewolf seer. She saw fire that sang and gods who wept. Then just as suddenly the vision snapped. They camped that night in a hollowed-out oak. Chech snored. Talia sat curled beneath her cloak, unable to sleep. Her cursed hand glowed faintly even in slumber, and stars trembled above her like scattered grains of salt. A rustle broke the silence. She sprang up, wand in hand, a half-burnt muffin ready to launch. From the trees emerged a man something like one, tall, lean, wrapped in a tattered traveler's cloak. His hair glinted silver in the moonlight, his eyes cold and brilliant were the eyes of a predator. Talia took a step back. "Who are you?" He said nothing, just tilted his head, nostrils flaring. "I asked." "You bear the scent of prophecy," he said, voice low and rough. "And something fouler. But a magic?" She blinked. "Excuse me." He crossed the space between them in a blur. Talia barely raised her one before he was in front of her, hand around her wrist. The crescent mark flared. He snarled and recoiled as though burned. "So it's true." "What's true?" "You're the harbinger." His gaze narrowed. "Or the rebirth." Talia, heart pounding, thrust her wand at his chest. "Back off. Move, boy." He froze, then gave a grim, bitter smile. "So she still dreams in you." Talia's breath caught. "Who are you?" "Kaelen Thorn," he said. "Once sworn to the moon. Once protector of the goddess who betrayed us all. And now, I hunt what I once served." His eyes locked on hers. "You may be her, Breadwitch. But if the prophecy proves true, I will either guard you," his claws extended, glinting silver, "or I will end you." The wind rose. The moon flickered behind cloud. Talia's voice did not shake. "Try anything, and I'll smite you with exploding focaccia." A pause. Then, "That is the strangest threat I've ever heard," Kaelen muttered. "Get used to it." She squared her shoulders. "Because if I'm some goddess, I'm going to write my own story. Fate can knead itself." And in the night, the crescent mark on her palm pulsed once warm and steady. Not a curse. Not quite a crown. Something new. Something hers. Chapter 2 of Knights and Curses. Kaelen Thorn walked ahead without sound. Talia tried not to let that annoy her. She, on the other hand, stepped on every possible twig, tripped over 2 mossy rocks, and was currently attempting to untangle her cloak from an aggressively clingy thorn bush. "I think this bush is trying to eat me." Kaelen didn't glance back. It wouldn't be the first to try. Chech, gliding lazily above them, cackled. "That's his version of flirting. I'd rather kiss a basilisk." Kaelen snorted, a sound like a wolf huffing through laughter. "You wouldn't survive the venom. And you'd know all about poison, wouldn't you?" she snapped. "What exactly are you?" He stopped. The forest stilled. Kaelen turned slowly, silver eyes catching the moonlight like polished steel. "I was once a knight of the Moon Temple, oath-bound to a saloon herself, until she vanished, until she," his jaw clenched, "died and left us to rot under full stars." Talia crossed her arms. "And now you're a wandering murder dog with commitment issues?" His lip curled. "You some unsentient scones. That was one time." "Twice," Chech muttered. Kaelen's gaze lowered to her hand, where the crescent mark pulsed faintly beneath her glove. "The prophecy said the moon would return in fractured form, but it didn't say whether she'd come back sane." Talia raised her chin. "Well, I'm not a goddess, just a bread-slinging witch with bad luck and worse hair. So if you're going to murder me in the woods, get on with it." A long pause. Then Kaelen turned away. "If I were going to kill you," he said, voice cool, "you'd be dead already." "Charming," she muttered, but he didn't draw his blade. Instead, he walked on shoulders tense, like a coiled spring. The moon above shimmered, flickering behind torn clouds, and a heavy quiet settled between them. Talia followed. She had too many questions. About a saloon. About her mark. About him. But for now, survival came first. They stopped to camp in a clearing lit by glow moss. Kaelen constructed a fire with swift, brutal precision, stacking wood as if he were building a pyre. Talia sat opposite him, fidgeting with a charm pouch she'd sewn into her sleeve. "So why didn't you kill me?" He didn't look up. "Because I'm not convinced you're her." Comforting. "And because if you are, I need you alive long enough to decide whether the world's worth saving." That's even less comforting. Kaelen finally met her eyes. "When a saloon fell, she took half the moon with her. Wolves like me lost our divine tether. Without the goddess, we're little more than beasts bound by hunger and rage. Some of us resisted, others," his voice cracked, "others became monsters. And you think I can fit? I think you might be the last chance we have to stop the church from ending us all." Talia blinked. "The church? The holy flame sees your mark as heresy. If they get their hands on you, they'll burn you before you can sneeze breadcrumbs, which is likely." "I'm allergic to pine." Kaelen almost smiled. Then his expression hardened. "We move at dawn. The witch court is fractured. They won't protect you unless you prove you're worth the trouble." "How?" "There's a hunt," he said. "A secret rite. Werewolves are being targeted again. Someone's stealing their blood, binding their spirits. If you help stop it, they might listen." Talia blinked. "So let me get this straight. I've been abducted, glowing, accused of godhood, hunted by prophecy fanatics, and now I'm being dragged into a supernatural murder mystery." "Yes. And you expect me to help?" "Yes." Talia stared at him, then reached into her satchel and pulled out a steaming puff pastry, which she flung at his face. He caught it one-handed, bit into it, chewed. "What is this?" "Enchanted apple pear siruphin. Calms rage. Might also give you hiccups." Kaelen blinked, swallowed and hiccup ped. He glared. Talia smiled sweetly. "That's for dragging me into divine politics without asking." Later, when she lay on a blanket of moss beneath a sleeping spell, Talia dreamt of silver towers crowned in blood, of Kaelen, crowned in thorns, eyes glowing like starlight, and of a voice distant, echoing her own, and not her own. Will you be curse or crown my light? She woke gasping, the crescent on her palm hot and burning like moonfire. Cale was already up, watching her silently. The hunt begins, he said. We're eyed east, toward the hollow hills. Where the werewolves fell, she murmured. Where fate always waits. And Talia, shaking, afraid, furious, glowing, nodded. Then let's meet it. But we're bringing sea ruffins. They reached the hollow hills by twilight. Once, this place had been sacred ground where moon priests whispered prophecy into starkest grass, and where wolves danced under full moons in celebration, not hunger. Now it lay in ruin. Ash curled along the ridgelines. Silver bone chimes, once used to guide spirits, clattered hollow in the wind. Talia stepped gingerly over the remnants of a shattered altar. It smells like old spells and burnt hair. Cale sniffed the air. And blood. Fresh. She shivered. Is this the hunt? No, he said, crouching low. This is the aftermath. Before she could speak, a howl deep and shuddering ripped through the valley. Talia spun. From the shadows emerged a beast huge, fur-matted with reed, its eyes wild with fear. Not a full werewolf, half-shifted, caught between flesh and curse. Its mouth opened, but only static came out. Cale surged forward. Hold him. Talia yelped as Cale tackled the creature mid-leap. He snarled something in an old tongue moon language and the beast stilled. Talia rushed forward, fingers glowing with instinctive magic. Not fire, not food, something older. She placed her palm to the beast's brow. The crescent in her skin flared. The wolf screamed and then sagged, unconscious. Cale looked up, breathing heavily. What did you do? I don't know. I felt his pain. His mind was fractured. I soothed it. He stared at her like she'd grown wings. That was lunar grace, he said. Loon's healing gift. She shook her head. I didn't try to do anything. You don't have to, he said softly. It's waking in you. They set up camp in a grove of hollow trees, lit by faintly glowing fungi. The injured werewolf, whose name was Orin, Cale discovered, slept wrapped in warding cloth, his breathing shallow but steady. Talia nibbled at a berry scone and stared into the fire. So what happened to him? Cale spoke slowly. Someone is trapping werewolves during partial shift, using blood binding to keep them between forms. It's forbidden magic, painful, dehumanizing. A ritual like that can only be powered by a divine tether. Someone's channeling pantheon magic illegally. Talia's stomach dropped. So church, blood witches, or rogue gods. Pick your nightmare. And you want me to help fix it? Cale gave her a look. You're not exactly uninvolved anymore. Talia buried her face in her hands. I just wanted to make lemon curd tarts and get my familiar ordained. Now I'm apparently a divine reincarnation with healing powers and a death cult fan club. Chach, roosting above them, chirped sleepily. You forgot the goose. Talia groaned. Cale chuckled. Just once. She peeked through her fingers. Did the scary wolf man just laugh? His expression sobered. Don't get used to it. Too late. I'm baking that moment into a pie of memory. Later that night, unable to sleep, Talia wandered to the hill's edge. The wind tugged at her hair like fingers made of mist. The moon hung low, heavy and golden, half covered by cloud. Cale stood a few paces ahead, arms folded, eyes scanning the horizon. I thought wolves liked company, she said. Not all of us, he murmured. Not anymore. She stepped closer. Do you miss it? The old days? He was quiet a long moment. Then, we were knights, guardians of prophecy. The moon goddess didn't rule us. She walked beside us. We fought for her, bled for her. Then she vanished, and the witch courts collapsed. The church hunted us. Our own blood turned feral. Talia looked down. Do you think she abandoned you? He glanced at her and for a moment, just a moment, his eyes were vulnerable. I think she made a choice we weren't ready to understand. Talia pressed a hand to her chest. Her mark burned. What if I'm her? She whispered. Then I hope you choose differently. A silence. Then she said, I'm not a goddess. No, Cale said. You're something harder. What? A girl with no destiny but the one she dares to make. She blinked, taken aback. For once, she didn't deflect with a joke. They stood like that, side by side in silver twilight, saying nothing more. But something settled in her chest, a quiet knowing. Not love. Not yet, but maybe trust. Come dawn, the werewolf woke screaming. Talia rushed to him, calming him with a swirl of honeyed wind. His eyes, bloodshot and gold, locked on hers. They took the others, he rasped. The Nightbinders. They wear white flame. They drain our moon blood. Cale cursed. Church inquisitors. In shook. They seek the crescent core, the divine fragment. They said she'd draw it out. He looked at Talia. She touched her mark, and it pulsed. They're after me, she breathed. Kaelin rose, already packing. Then we move, before they find us. Talia stood slowly. The crescent in her palm pulsed again, not warning, but calling. She didn't know who she truly was yet, but someone did, and they were coming. Chapter 3. Which court lies in butter scrying. The gates of the moonlit court shimmered like pearl dust in the morning fog. Arched spires grown from living crystal, adorned with draping lunar vines that pulsed to the heartbeat of magic itself. Talia stared up at the structure and felt entirely underdressed, under-colludive, and possibly overcursed. Are we sure this is a good idea? She whispered. Kaelin, standing beside her, adjusted his hood. No. Good, I thought I was the only one feeling like an imposter waiting to be vaporized. You probably are. Wow. Reassuring. The gates opened soundlessly, revealing a procession of witches in robes dyed with starlight. Their eyes lingered on Talia's marked hand, wrapped now in enchanted silk that could only dim, not hide, the glowing crescent. Whispers followed her through the grand marble halls like ghostly birds. The harbinger, the butterborn. No. The moon-marked. She smells like pastry. Talia walked stiffly, cheeks aflame, trying very hard not to summon a defensive baguette. They were led to the high conjuriatrium, where the witch court convened in spirals of moonstone seating. Floating lanterns cast prismatic shadows over the ornate carvings on the walls. Wolves, stars, familiars in flight. In the center stood a raised platform shaped like a crescent moon. Upon it waited Princess Morel Raventhorn. Her hair flowed like a sheet of ink, and her eyes sparkled with the sharp calculation of someone who had spent their life weaponizing charm. She wore a circlet of bone and silver, her aura a carefully sculpted blend of pride, power, and just enough cold danger to freeze a lesser witch in place. Talia gave a half-hearted curtsy, high-eyebrowed snacks. Kaelin hissed under his breath. This is not a picnic. Princess Morel tilted her head. So the Breadwitch arrives. Talia's smile faltered. That's not my official title. No? The princess descended the steps, each footfall echoing with magical resonance. You're Talia Fernbrooke, apprentice, unlicensed, untrained, bearer of the moonmark, prophesied harbinger of divine catastrophe, and your magic appears to be half food-based chaos and half divine radiance. Talia blinked. When you say it like that, it does sound impressive. She's joking, Kael, and muttered. I always do when I'm about to cry. Morel studied her, eyes narrowing slightly. You don't look divine. Thanks. I bathed in pond water this morning. A few witches giggled. The princess didn't. She stepped closer. This court has not bowed to prophecy into generations. But your mark, if genuine, complicates things, so we will test you. Talia paled. Test? Morel raised a hand. The mirror of veil water sees through blood, soul, and lie. If you are a fragment of the fallen goddess Elune, the mirror will know. And if I'm not, the princess's smile was thin. Then you are a threat masquerading as a savior. Talia swallowed. That's not vague or ominous at all. The mirror was not a mirror. It was a pool, clear and bottomless, suspended in midair by roots of moon wood, dripping backward into itself. It glowed with a soft, hungry light. Talia stepped forward and caught her reflection, blurred, flickering. The moment her foot touched the edge of the pool, the water shivered. Silver fire burst upward, engulfing her. She didn't scream. There was no pain, only memory. She was standing on a bridge made of moonlight, her arms bleeding starlight. Around her, the skies to open with divine thunder. She saw wolves chained in holy iron, witches burning in church fire, and above it all, a shadowed throne empty, save for a single, flickering crescent. Then, a voice. Choose, child of chaos, crown or curse. Talia gasped. The fire vanished. She fell backward into Kaelin's arms. The court was silent. Morel's face was unreadable. Well, that was dramatic. Kaelin studied Talia on her feet. She saw something. Morel turned, her cloak snapping behind her. Everyone sees something. The mirror does not confirm godhood. It reveals potential. And hers isn't stable. A murmur rippled through the court. Talia found her voice. So that's it? A magic mirror light show, and now I'm what, on probation? You are under observation, Morel corrected. Should you collapse into madness or summon another butterstorm, the court will intervene. Very comforting. You're welcome. That evening, after much yelling, fasting, and a former oath not to turn the palace into a pastry dimension, Talia was assigned quarters in the Outer Crescent's pirate are usually reserved for eccentric alchemists and familiars undergoing soul therapy. Talia took one look at the room, half library, half greenhouse, half bakery, yes, 3 halves, which is of flexible geometry, and slumped into a seat. I'm not a goddess, she whispered. Chech waddled out of a hatbox and flapped onto her shoulder. No, you're not, but you're something they've never seen before. Unicorn-level disaster? Choice. She blinked. Huh? You don't remember who you were, Chech said, nestling against her. You don't have to. You're not bound to prophecy. You're bound to what you do now. Talia closed her eyes. In her mind, the mirror burned, and somewhere beneath all the lies, all the fear, something inside her pulsed. Not prophecy, not memory, but will. The next morning, Talia woke to find a scroll jammed under herd, with by royal decree in minor threat of fire stamped across the top in glimmering ink. Another summons, she groaned, rolling out of bed and face planting directly into a tray of prophetic croissants she'd enchanted overnight. They rearranged themselves with an offended huff. Chech peeked out from a drawer. Royal orders. Trial of prophecy, which court tradition. I just got here. That's how prophecy works, he muttered, always running ahead of sense. The trial was held in the Moonstone Gallery, a long corridor lined with scrying orbs and whispering tapestries that judged you by her hairstyle. Talia, still sleep-rumpled, entered with Kale and at her side and found Princess Morel waiting, flanked by a half-circle of witch court judges. One of them, a short woman with hawk feathers braided into her hair, stepped forward. Talia Fernbrooke, by decree of the Crescent lineage and the ancient rites of the witch courts, you are to undertake the trial of prophecy. You will brew a scrying vision that reveals your role in the coming age. Talia raised her hand. Question: do I get to not do that? No follow-up question. Have any past trial participants exploded? Most. Talia sighed. Lovely. She was led to a circular platform etched with lunar runes. At its center sat a wide cauldron brimming with thick cream and an ominous shimmer of magic. This is dream milk, Morel explained, a scrying base drawn from the dreams of moth fairies and fermented over starlit waters. Add ingredients that represent your essence. The vision will manifest. Talia peered into the cauldron. That's a bowl of cosmic yogurt. Morel handed her a basket. Proceed. Talia stared at the contents: herbs, salt crystals, a phoenix feather, dried rosebuds, and inexplicably, a perfectly ripe pear. She sighed. Fine, let's do this. She plucked a pinch of lavender, 3 drops of elder sap, and on instinct threw in a cube of aged gouda from her sleeve pouch. A ripple passed through the dream milk. Kale and stiffened. Chech, watching from a perch above, fluffed his feathers anxiously. Then Talia reached into her pocket and added the last thing, a sliver of bread crust from her ruined cottage. The cauldron roared to life. Silver mists spiraled upward, forming glowing images mid-air. First Talia as a child, chasing her unaware spells through Miller's Hollow. Then Talia now, wand in one hand, the moon crest blazing on the other, standing between burning temples and a ring of witches with tears in their eyes. The crowd murmured. Then, the vision changed. Talia saw herself older, crowned in thorns and crescent silver, standing in a ruined world. Her eyes burned like starlight. Blood trickled down her arms. At her feet, Kale and Leon moving. Chech was nowhere. A cathedral burned behind her, and the moon above was broken in half. I am choice, the vision, Talia said, and choice demands a cost. The vision shattered like glass. Talia gasped and staggered back, shaking. Morel stepped forward, face pale. This vision is unprecedented. A judge leaned in. She is the moon's echo, or her undoing, muttered another. Kale, and grabbed Talia's arm. Are you all right? No, she rasped, but I don't think I've ever been. Back in her spire that evening, Talia brewed tea from calming mint and regret. The vision still clung to her skin like frost. I saw myself. Alone, she whispered, crowned and monstrous. Chech, now wearing a tiny knitted scarf he insisted it was ceremonial, hopped beside her. Visions are truths. Yes, but from 1,000 angles. They show what could be, not what must be. I don't want to be anyone's goddess. You're not, she blinked. But the prophecy doesn't own you, Chech said. You're not a saloon. You're not just Talia either. You're the in-between. You get to decide what comes next. She looked at her hand. The mark flickered faintly as if listening. Then I'll decide, she whispered. That night, Morel visited. Talia blinked at the royal witch, who stood awkwardly in the doorway holding a bottle of starfruit wine into floating goblets. I don't drink with doom prophets, Talia said dryly. I'm not here to fight, Morel replied. I'm here because I saw the same vision you did, and I think we need to talk. Talia tilted her head. Why? Because if you're going to break the world, I'd at least like to be your friend when it happens. Talia stared at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. Well, I suppose every goddess needs a slightly terrifying best ie. Agreed. They sat, the wine poured itself, and under the moonlight, two young witches, not goddess and heir, not enemies nor saviors, clinked glasses, but began to plan a future neither of them fully understood, but it would be theirs. Chapter for the Hemomancer's bargain. The scent of blood was sharpest where the earth had turned black. Talia stood at the edge of the glowworm grove, where light dared not linger and the air hummed with whispers that didn't belong to the living. Kaelin stood to her right, gaze fixed ahead, and Princess Morel to her left, her moon staff-drawn button lit. Are we sure she's even real? Talia asked, pulling her cloak tighter. She's real, Kaelin said grimly. Isolde has been alive for over a century, if you can call it that. Morel added, she was once of the royal bloodlines, a witch of House Fiire-Alune, until she turned to Hemomanes. And now she what? Lives in a haunted swamp. Dreams of birthing new gods, Morel said darkly. From blood. Talia gulped. Sounds super reasonable. Kaelin gave her a look. If she offers you a gift, refuse it. If she asks for blood, run. What if she asks for tea? Run faster. They entered the grove. Immediately the world changed. Trees here were skeletal and knotted, their bark veined like flesh. The roots pulsed faintly underfoot, as if the earth itself had veins. Shadows moved against the direction of light, and the sky was wrong, purple and gold, shifting like oil on water. This wasn't just a forest, it was a wound. Keep close, Morel warned. This place bends minds. Talia stepped carefully between ferns shaped like fingers. Magic tugged at her, or the same sensation she'd felt when touching the mirror, when casting in the moonlight arena. Only now, it was tangled in something hungrier. Then came the voice. So the goddess reborn walks again, and brings her courtiers. It echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Then she appeared. Isolde emerged from the gloom like a ghost in velvet. Her robes were stitched from living leeches, and her hair spilled around her like blood on water. Her eyes were the reed of old wine and ruin. Welcome to my garden, sweet starling, she purred. You've bloomed so nicely. Talia blinked. Oh thanks, I think. Morel's knuckles tightened around her staff. Kaelin shifted subtly, standing between them and the Hemomancer. Isolde's gaze flicked to him. Still protecting your gods, Wolf King? Even after she abandoned you? Kaelin didn't answer. Isolde returned her focus to Talia. You've felt it, haven't you? The fragments inside you, the way memory slips in through dreams, the way magic answers to your will, even before you command it. Talia said nothing. You are Essalune's echo, Isolde continued, but you are not only her, you are something new, unwritten, and that, little witch, makes you very interesting. I'm not for sale, Talia said softly. Isolde smiled. Oh, darling, you already were old. Long ago. I merely want to help you break your chains. And what's the price? Kaelin growled. Isolde's eyes gleamed. A drop, just one, from the moon-marked veins, to reveal what was lost. No, Morel said instantly, but Talia stepped forward. Morel, if this is my past, if there's truth in it, I need to know. Morel opened her mouth to argue, but the look in Talia's eyes silenced her. Kaelin spoke low and sharp. If she hurts you, I'll bake her into a scone, Talia said. Isolde laughed, delighted. Talia extended her hand. The Hemomancer reached out, impossibly gentle, and pricked her finger. A single drop of silver blood red fell to the soil. The earth shivered. The world dissolved. Talia's breath caught as the grove fell away, replaced by a swirling haze of stars and bone. Voices echoed around her, distant and familiar. She stood on a moonlit battlefield. The sky above was cracked like porcelain. Around her were gods, not statues, not myths, but towering beings wreathed in elemental glory. The earth father roaring with stone lungs, the sea mother trailing endless tides, the one above burning with cruel light. And in the center Essalune. Talia gasped. Essalune looked like her, not identical but close enough to steal her breath. She wore no crown, only a shawl of shadow light and a smile lined with grief. I chose to fall, Essalune said to the gods. I chose them over you. You chose weakness, snarled the one above. I chose love. They struck her down. Talia screamed, and awoke, crumpled on the ground. Kaelin was at her side instantly. Talia, she shook, gasping, blood still trickling from her nose. I saw her. I saw them. The old gods. She fell for us. Morel knelt beside her. What do you mean? She chose to die, to be reborn. She gave up her divinity on purpose. Kaelin's face was pale. Isolde stood above them, eyes soft. Now you see, the truth buried in blood. She wasn't taken. She leapt. Talia wiped her eyes. Why show me this? Because you are not a prisoner of prophecy, Isolde said. You are prophecy's end, and I believe in choice too. A pause. Then she added with a wry smile, but if you ever want to become a god again, I know a few rituals. Kaelin growled. Not happening. Isolde winked. The offer's eternal. She vanished into the grove, her laughter trailing behind her like perfume. They walked in silence for hours after. Talia's mind buzzed with the vision, with questions, with an ache she couldn't name. Finally, she whispered, she gave up everything. Kaelin nodded. Morel said, and now you carry the choice she left behind. Talia didn't speak, but she felt it. In her blood, in her bones, and in the glowing mark that, for the first time, didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a promise. The stars looked different when you knew one had fallen for you. Talia didn't sleep that night. She sat with her knees hugged to her chest, watching the moon crawl across the sky, the silver mark on her hand glowing like it understood things she hadn't caught up to yet. She gave it all up, she whispered. Kaelin stirred from his place by the fire. Esaloon. Talia unauded. She could have stayed a goddess. She had temples, wolves, stars, but she gave it up. For mortals. Kaelin's voice was quiet but tight. For you. Talia didn't answer. She was still shaking from the vision, still remembering the rage in the one above's voice, the terrible beauty of Esaloon's fall, how the gods, those who shaped worlds, had feared her act of defiance. I thought being divine meant being more, she murmured, but she made herself less on purpose. She made herself free, Kaelin said. A silence passed between them. Then he added more softly, and now you carry that freedom forward. She stared at her hands. Her magic, once just bursts of culinary chaos, now pulsed with something deeper. The dream milk, the mirror, Isolde's vision, they all confirmed it. She was part goddess. But more than that, she was new. She wasn't Esaloon reborn. She was Talia becoming. In the days that followed, they traveled east toward the sacred border of the witch valleys, where moonlight met river song and divine ley lines carved truth into the earth. The witch court had sanctioned a temporary ceasefire to prepare for the festival of Lunaria, an ancient rite meant to reaffirm the goddess's bond with her chosen. Except there was no goddess, just a girl with enchanted soup recipes and a dangerously curious familiar. Talia didn't tell the court about the vision in full. She kept Esaloon's choice close to her chest, a fragile, private truth. Instead, she asked for time to reflect. Morel allowed it, with a reluctant nod. But you will speak at the Lunaria festival, she warned. They're expecting a revelation, or at least a divine food pun. Talia groaned. No pressure, right? Only enough to crack bone. The night before the festival, Talia returned to the Sanctum of Spell Roots, a quiet garden deep in the court's western wing where apprentice witches practiced their craft in peace. She set out her ingredients: elderberry honey, a drop of lunar dew, powdered sugar from a dream jar, and 3 enchanted eggs that giggled when she touched them. I don't even know what I'm making, she muttered. Then it's perfect, Chech said from atop a nearby statue. She glanced at him. What do you mean? You're baking your soul, aren't you? Talia considered that. She didn't have a recipe, no charted sidles, just instinct, and a prayer that maybe her own magic might tell a story better than words. She folded in memories the buttery chaos of Miller's Hollow, the sting of exile, the shimmer of prophecy, the aching dream of Esaloon's fall. All of it kneaded into dough. She whispered her spelt Ruth through taste, memory through crumb. Let the bite reveal the being. And then, she baked. The Lunaria festival opened with silver lanterns, drifting familiars, and witches in cloaks of celestial silk. The moonlit court gathered in the arena, a marble circle with a glass ceiling through which the real moon stared, unblinking. Talia stepped forward carrying a single, glowing pastry on a tray. A hush fell. She placed the pastry round, spiral-shaped, shimmering with divine icing at the center of the arena. Morel stepped beside her. Is this symbolic bread? Talia took a breath. This is a heart's whirl, she said. It contains memory, magic, essence. One bite, and you'll taste who I was, who I am, who I might become. The court exchanged wary glances. Then Morel, without hesitation, stepped forward and broke off a piece. She ate. Her eyes widened. The princess saw a little girl in Miller's Hollow, trying to summon bread to help a grieving neighbor and getting pie hail instead. She saw Olia standing defiant before prophecy. She saw Ilune falling in silver flame. And she saw Talia rising, hand blazing, saying, "I am not the past, I am the promise." When Morel blinked, tears clung to her lashes. She is the princess turned. She is not just divine, she is real. Others stepped forward, each saw, and believed. But not everyone celebrated. That night as lanterns rose and witches sang under moonlight, Talia felt Ita pulling deep in her bones. She followed it to the edge of the valley where the moonlight twisted. A figure waited. "Isolde, you baked your soul," the Hemamancer said, almost reverent. "You really are something new." "I'm not a god," Talia said. "No," Isolde agreed, "but you could become more." Talia looked her in the eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Isolde's smile was bitter. "Because once I begged the gods for justice, and they laughed. Now I want to build new ones made of blood and truth and choice." "You want to forge gods?" Talia whispered. "I want to forge a future," Isolde said, "and I think I'll need you to finish it." She vanished into the dark. Talia stood alone, then turned to the moon. "Let them come," she whispered. "Let prophecy try." The mark on her hand burned, but this time, it didn't hurt, it shone. Chapter 5: A Festival of Teeth and Fire. The festival of Lunaria had always been sacred. Once it honored the divine balance between moon and mortal, a harmony that was broken when Ilune fell. Now it had become a spectacle of remembrance, hope, and barely concealed political maneuvering. And this year it had a surprise guest, or a moonmarked, pastry conjuring apprentice with no idea how to waltz in enchanted heels. "I look like a glazed chandelier," Talia muttered as she whirled in front of the mirror. Her gown shimmered like pooled moonlight, layered with enchanted sugar lace and trailing starlight ribbons that refused to stay out of puddles. "Why are there feathers in my hair?" "Ceremonial raven plume," Morel said from the chaise, sipping lunar wine with practiced indifference. "Symbol of transcendent destiny. And you're welcome. I'm more burnt croissant than transcendent anything." From her perch on a hovering broomstick shelf, Chech cackled. "You look like a fancy dessert." "You're the flan of fate," Talia scowled. "Remind me again why I agreed to be paraded around like a sparkly sacrifice." "Because," Morel said smoothly, "the more the people see you as their moon's hope, the harder it becomes for anyone to assassinate you without backlash." Talia blinked. "That's comforting. I do my best." The moonlight masquerade began just after dusk. Floating candles drifted through the air like gentle stars, illuminating the Lunaria arena, which had been transformed into a dreamscape of shifting staircases, petal-dusted archways, and a moon pool reflecting not the real sky, but a vision of the one that used to be whole, unbroken, which is spun in slow circles with masked partners. Familiars, decked in silver bells and satin, perched on shoulders or hovered on gust spells. Even Kaelin, who loathed courts and formal events, was somewhere in the crowd in ceremonial armor, his cloak bearing the mark of the moon temple long defunct. Talia stuck to the edge of the crowd, sipping glowing punch that tasted like lavender regret. The whispers followed her like shadows. "That's her, isn't it? She stopped the breadstorm in Hollow Hills. I heard she baked her soul into a tart. She looks human. They say she speaks to dead gods in her sleep." She exhaled, deeply tempted to cause a distraction with jam. Then someone touched her arm. "You're not dancing." She turned and nearly dropped her drink. Kaelin. He looked taller in formal wear somehow. His hair was tied back, revealing sharp cheekbones and an expression that was only mostly a smirk. "You clean up well," Talia managed. "You look like moonfire baked into a cake," he said. "That better not be your idea of a compliment." "I don't do compliments," he replied. "Only truths that sound suspiciously like them." She snorted. He extended a hand. "Walk with me." They circled the edge of the arena, the music swirling around them like a living tide. "I still don't understand why anyone believes in me," Talia said softly. "Half of my spells still end in baked goods with opinions." "You believe in yourself. I believe I'm still figuring things out." "That's not the same." Kaelin's voice dropped. "Do you remember the vision you saw in the Glowworm Grove?" She nodded. "Ilune falling, the gods afraid. And do you remember the moment after, when she chose not to rise again as a god but to fracture, to live among us?" "I remember," she whispered. "That's the part they fear the most," Kaelin said. "Not your divinity, your humanity. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what makes you real." Talia turned her face up toward the fragmented moon above. "It still looks broken." "It is," he said, "but you're the first person who's ever made me believe it could be whole again." She stilled. Then slowly, carefully took his hand. The music stopped with a sudden jarring silence. Then came the scream. Sharp, human, cut off too quickly. The crowd turned. Talia's pulse spiked as she saw the shadow erupt from one of the spiral towers tall, robed in scorched white flame. A church inquisitor. He hurled something into the air, a relic forged from cracked bone and glowing with divine venom. Kale cursed. Get back. Too late. The relic exploded in a wave of fire. But not normal fire. This was holy fire forged by the one above, fire that hated witches, that devoured prophecy, that unmade magic. The crowd screamed. Wards shattered. Spells fizzled. Familiar scattered. Talia's gown began to burn. Then, her arc flared, and so did her magic. A butterstorm erupted. Golden whirls of thick, enchanted butter swirled outward, smothering the holy fire in sizzling globals of magical fat. Rolls of sticky bread spiraled through the air like spinning shields. Honey-glazed wind howled in defiance. The fire shrieked as Talia's magic smothered it in saturated, divine defiance. When the smoke cleared, the Inquisitor lay broken at the center of a melted crater of brioche. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Kale looked at her with something between awe and horror. Morel emerged from the rubble with smudged mascara and a snapped wand. You summoned a butterstorm. Talia, still panting, looked at her hands. I didn't mean to. You saved us, Morel said, with pastry. I did? From the rubble, a tiny voice squeaked, long live the bread queen. Talia blinked, and the arena erupted in cheers. But in the tower above, unseen by the crowd, a figure cloaked in reed watched through a shard of obsidian. Isolde. She traced the air with one long finger. She's almost ready, she whispered. Now the gods will have to answer. And somewhere deep beneath the court, a relic pulsed to life, one not of bread or moonlight, but of blood. The moon was too bright, too sharp, too close. Talia sat on the scorched steps of the Lunari arena, shivering in the aftermath of battle, her once lustrous gown charred and dripping with hust. The butterstorm had saved them, but her hands still trembled from the magic she'd channeled, and from what she'd felt inside it. That hadn't been a spell, that had been instinct. Water, she croaked. Kaelan handed her a flask without speaking. His cloak, now wrapped around her shoulders, smelled of ash and iron. Tell me I didn't just butter blast a holy inquisitor into a cinnamon crater. You didn't, he said. Her eyes lit up hopefully. You obliterated him, Kaelan corrected. There's a difference. Talia groaned. From above, Chetch spiraled down in slow circles, cinched feathers fluttering. Well, that was dramatic. 10 out of 10. Excellent pastry usage. Slight deduction for aim. I wasn't aiming, she mumbled. It just happened. The magic, it didn't feel like mine. Morel approached, soot smudged across her cheek and a dagger of moon quartz in hand. Her eyes, usually hard with political calculation, were now almost reverent. You channeled divine food magic against one of the church's highest inquisitors, she said. That wasn't a mistake. That was a declaration. I wasn't trying to declare anything. I was trying not to die flamed. The court will take it as a sign, Morel continued. You defended the sacred rites. You shielded innocence. The prophecy says the moonmark will stand against the holy flame with powers unseen. You just proved it true. Talia felt her stomach twist. So now I'm back on the goddess pedestal. More like catapulted. By midnight, the injured had been tended, the arena sealed, and the festival officially unceremoniously ended. The silver bell of morning rang once for the inquisitor, whose body had been consumed by divine pastry combustion. And yet, the court buzzed with energy. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Talia didn't have the heart to tell them she didn't know either. She sat in her tower's observatory hours later, barefoot, robe-wrapped, trying to coax coming charm tea to stop turning itself into custard. Kale leaned against the window behind her, silent as ever. Chetch slept, belly up, in her bread basket. I lost control, she said. That wasn't a spell, that was something else. Kale crossed the room. It wasn't a saloon, it was you. She looked up sharply. I saw it, he said. You didn't glow like her. You flared like a star being born. You didn't recite a spell. You reached inside and decided. Talia's voice cracked. But what if it was her? What if she's taking over? What if I'm just the vessel? Kale knelt beside her. You're not her, he said. You're not just a candle she left burning. You're your own fire. His hand brushed hers, fingers warm against her rumbling skin. You're not a vessel, he whispered. You're a beginning. Talia's breath caught. His face was close now, and the silence between them stretched taut like the thread between the moon and tide. I'm scared, she admitted. He gave a soft smile, rare and unguarded. Good, he said, means you still remember who you are. A bell tolled 3 times. Emergency summon. Morel burst into the room not moments later, flanked by guards and spell steel. A relic has awakened beneath the temple vault, she said. Talia blinked. Wait, what relic? Morel's voice was tight. One that should have stayed sealed. The rib of the goddess. Talia stood, heart pounding. Esilune's rib? Kale, and went still. That's a myth. It was, Morel said grimly, until it started singing. The temple vault lay deep beneath the moonlit court, past warded passages and dream-woven doors. The air grew colder the further they descended, as though time itself held its breath. The relic chamber was small, bare except for a floating shard of silver bone. It pulsed in the air like a heartbeat. When Talia entered, it flared. Everyone else staggered back. Talia alone stood still, because the rib, the divine fragment of Esilune's mortal form, was singing in her voice. She approached slowly. The moment she reached out, the bone flared once and shot directly into her chest. She gasped. Magic exploded outward. Kale, and roared her name. When the smoke cleared, Talia was glowing. No burning with silver-white light, her eyes twin moons, her breath steaming with divine power. Her dress had vanished, replaced by robes that shimmered like starlight threaded through water. The rib had vanished, absorbed into her. She's ascending, whispered a priestess behind Morel. No, Morel breathed. She's being rewritten. Kaelin stepped forward carefully. Talia? Her head turned, and for a terrifying moment, her gaze was not her own. But then, she blinked. The light dimmed. She fell into his arms, gasping. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. He held her close. I know. Behind them, the court stared in stunned silence. But far below the temple, in a forgotten catacomb, another rib began to stir, and in the dark, Isolde smiled. Chapter 6 The Sunlit Deceit. Talia had always imagined the holy city of Solmar as something from a stained glass fairy tale, soaring white towers, radiant archways, gold leaf streets that echoed with sacred hymns. The reality was less divine. It reeked incense and fear. The air was heavy with sanctified dust, the scent of burned parchment, and the oily tang of melted purity wax. The streets were perfectly clean, yes, but in the way an open grave is clean scrubbed of the living. Talia tugged her veil lower and tight, and the drawstring of her blessed robe, which she suspected had once belonged to a melted nun. Morel's voice rang in her earpiece spell. Do not speak unless prompted. Do not reveal your mark, and do not accept communion. Got it, Talia murmured. Keep hands inside divine vehicle at all times. Kaelin, walking beside her in full clerical armor, whispered, You're being watched. I can feel it. Across the marble avenue, an acolyte with vacant eyes clutched a relic censer, trailing violet smoke that made the pigeons chant in broken harmony. Children in gold-trimmed tunics recited verses from the Book of Illumination, their tones too flat, too memorized. This wasn't devotion. This was indoctrination. They passed under a massive archway crowned by a statue of the one above, a featureless being of sun and flame, whose outstretched hands held scrolls and swords in equal measure. Beneath the statue, etched in fire steel, were the words, Blessed be the flame that burns away doubt. Talia shivered. Cheerful place. The church claims to protect, Kaelin murmured, but it only preserves what it can control. They arrived at the cathedral gates. Twin sun knights blocked the entry. One stepped forward and asked Kaelin, Cleric's credentials. Kaelin produced an engraved rune seal. The knights stared at it, then turned to Talia. And this one? She's my novice, Kaelin said. Mute, cursed with tongue silenced by which kin. Talia nearly choked. The knight sneered. May the light correct her. He let them pass. Inside, the sanctum of solar mercy gleamed like a wound. It was all gold and white and blood red. Every surface glowed. Glass mosaic saints looked down in serene judgment. Priests floated between pews, faces hidden behind veils of sunfire gauze. Relics hung in silver cages, bones, teeth, locks of hair, even tears crystallized into relic gems. Talia's stomach twisted. This was power, but not sacred, not divine, weaponized. They were led deeper into the cathedral, into the vestry of revelation, where visiting clergy could speak freely so long as their prayers were sanctioned. Waiting for them was a man draped in velvet sunfire robes. His smile was gentle, his eyes too knowing. Welcome, Brother Kaelin, he said, and your novice. I am Father Corvin. Talia froze, because she recognized him not from memory, but from nightmares. Golden eyes, fangs behind that smile, a scent like roses and rot. The vampire priest, Corvin poured wine into goblets too ornate to be trusted. "You've come far," he said to Kaelen. "All the way from the Ash Valleys. I hear they still burn witches there." Kaelen nodded stiffly. "Ash purifies." "Ah. Yes." Corvin's smile was too white. "And yet does it restore?" He turned his gaze to Talia. "And what of you, dear novice? What burden do you carry?" Talia remembered her cue, and kept her eyes lowered. "Mute, you say?" Corvin tilted his head. "Strange. She smells like starlight and storm." Kaelen stepped forward. "She is under my vow." Corvin held up his hands. "Peace, brother. I only mean to admire." Talia remained perfectly still. Corvin leaned in. "Tell me, do you dream?" Talia's fingers curled. The rib in her chest pulsed once a warning. He knew. She smiled sweetly, tilted her head, and accidentally spilled the wine. Corvin chuckled. "How clumsy is she, Reverend?" Kaelen said, "She dare not drink where she is unworthy." "Well said." After they left the vestry, Kaelen gripped her arm and hissed. He knew. "I know," she whispered. He smelled it. "He's not just a vampire." No, her eyes darkened. "He's waiting for something." That night, under the cathedral's inner cloisters, Talia slipped from her room and followed the pull of her mark. It led her into a secret chamber beneath the sanctuary, a crypt lined with broken sun relics. There she found an altar carved with moons hidden beneath layers of church idols, and someone had been praying at it. She reached out and brushed her fingers along the surface. The vision struck her like lightning. She stood before a throne of sunfire. The one above loomed. "You fell," the voice boomed, "and you shall be raised only by chains." A womaness alone, bleeding, burning, replied, "I would rather fall again than rise for you." Then came fire, chains, and her own scream. Talia collapsed. When she opened her eyes, Kaelen was beside her. "You're bleeding," he said hoarsely, wiping blood from her nose. "I saw him," she whispered, "the one above. And Esaloon." He wanted to reforge her into something obedient, but she refused. Kaelen stared. "The church is trying to resurrect her." "Not resurrect," Talia breathed. "Repurpose. They want me to finish what she wouldn't, to become their chained divinity." Kaelen's hands tightened into fists. "Then we'll burn this place down." No, her eyes blazed. "Not yet. First we infiltrate the sanctum. We find what relics they've hidden, and who else they've tried to remake." Kaelen hesitated, then nodded. "Then we set our own fire." Talia moved through the holy cathedral like a shadow sown from moonlight and fear. Beneath her stolen veil and cleric's robes, her heart beat too fast, too loud. Her fingers kept brushing the silver-threaded sash she charmed into a binding ward, and tucked into her left sleeve was a crusty crescent roll rigged with an explosive jam core, just in case. Kaelen rode beside her, silent and armed, every step betraying his tension. He hated this place, every inch of it pulsed with controlled piety and concealed cruelty, and worse, blood magic masked as divinity. Their destination, the vault of sainted bone, deep beneath the cathedral's sacred choir wing. Rumors spoke of relics the church had purified, shards of old gods, forgotten moonstones, even bottled dreams. If they could find proof of divine manipulation, they could expose the church before the witch courts and maybe destroy the very power that held Solmaris together. But first, they had to survive. Talia's moonmark pulsed under her glove as they entered the vault antechamber. Bypassing the seal with a sequence Morel had dug up in the Crescent archives, 3 knocks, a whispered prayer, and a drop of sugar on the threshold. The door opened on silent hinges. What waited beyond stole her breath. It was not a vault. It was a museum of heresy. The chamber was vast and circular, lit by floating globes of contained sunfire. Shelves stretched to the ceiling, filled with jars, urns, relic chests, and crystal vials. On every label names of gods long since struck from scripture. And in the center stood a glass coffin. Inside lay a woman, or what remained of one. Silver hair like hers, hollow eye sockets, skin scorched and marked with runes and both church glyphs and ancient lunar script. Over her heart, where her rib had been, was an empty cavity. Kaelen swore, "That's a vessel." Talia approached, trembling. They tried to rebuild her. The coffin pulsed with sealing spells. Inside, fragments of soul magic flickered, trapped, mangled echoes. Not enough for resurrection, but enough for a blueprint. "They've been trying to resurrect Esaloon," she whispered, "or worse, replicate her." Kaelen's voice was low and cold. "They're turning her into a weapon." Footsteps echoed outside. Talia reacted fast. Shelves. Now. She ducked behind a rack of relic crates. Kaelen vanished into the shadows. The door opened. Father Corvin entered, flanked by 2 silent priests in sun steel armor. He stopped before the glass coffin and smiled like someone revisiting an old friend. So stubborn, he said to the corpse. Even in death, you refused his light. He pressed a palm to the glass. It glowed briefly, then hissed. Corvin sighed. But the girl, she listens. Talia held her breath. She resists, yes, but she feels the pull. Esaloon's soul is gone, shattered, but the echo we found in her, he grinned. That's enough to mold. Kaelan's whisper crackled in Talia's ear via linked spell. He knows. We move now. But Corvin's next words froze her in place. She'll come willingly, in the cathedral tomorrow, when we crown her as the light-bound maiden. The priests bowed. And if she doesn't? One asked. Corvin's fangs flashed. Then we take her soul, piece by piece. The moment he left, Talia surged out. Did you hear that? She hissed. They plan to crown me as their divine puppet. Kaelan's eyes were wildfire. Then we tear their plans apart. Talia stepped up to the coffin and pressed her hand to the glass. Herma fled not with warmth but with warning. Pain prick led down her spine. The body inside twitched. Talia gasped. The runes etched across the corpse burned white and vanished. A ghostly voice echoed in her mind. He is not the first to chain divinity, but you may be the first to break it. She stumbled back. Kaelan caught her. That was her, she whispered. Or what's left of her. He steadied her. We need to go. Now. They returned to their cloister cell under cover of night. Talia was burning with fury. They want to crown me, strip me, reforge me. Kaelan knelt beside her. So we beat them to it. We make our own declaration. In public. I'll be killed before I speak 3 words. Not if you speak in magic. She blinked. He laid a cloth on the table. Inside a moon sigil woven in ash thread. Morale had this smuggled in. It's a lunacy sight spell. You can cast it over the crowd. Show them truth. Let them see the relics. The corpse. The vault. They'll riot, she said. They should. Talia looked down at her mark. It flared softly, steady and determined. I'm done running, she said. If they want a divine spectacle. She reached into her spell pouch. Then they'll get a blessed one. Dawn broke over Solmar is in a sweep of bells and fanfare. The central plaza filled with thousands, which is hidden among pilgrims. Spy familiars in the rafters. Moon wardens at the edge of rooftops, cloaked in glamour. At the head of the grand altar, Corvin stood beaming. And now, he declared, the one above grants us his radiant gift. Talia stepped forward, robe gleaming with woven light. The crowd hushed. Corvin extended a hand to crown her. She smiled, and tossed a jam sigil into the air. It exploded in a blast of sweet divination. The lunacy sight spell spread like wildfire. Visions poured over the crowd, the corpse in the coffin, the relic jars, the branding of Esaloon, the truth of divine abuse and corruption. Screams, gasps, shouts. Corvin's face twisted in fury. You dare? Talia's voice rang out, magnified by divine resonance. I am no one's puppet, no one's chained goddess. You called me her echo. I am not. I am her answer. Light exploded around her, not fire, not sun. Moon, and in the chaos that followed, the people rose. Some prayed, some wept, some fought, but for the first time in centuries, Solmaris trembled not from divine judgment, but from divine truth. Chapter 7 Court of Broken Oaths. The sky wept silver rain as Talia returned to the moonlit court. Not literal rain, this was a magical phenomenon, the weather, which is called divine precipitation. It happened once every few generations, usually when a major celestial power had been disrupted, apparently, blowing up a church relic, revealing a corpse goddess blueprint, and declaring yourself the answer to prophecy qualified. Not bad, Chech murmured from her shoulder, looking thoroughly unbothered by the rain. You upset an entire continent, and you didn't even explode. Progress. I'm tired, Talia muttered. You'll be tireder once the court starts scheming. He was right. The moonlit court's outer courtyard, usually bustling with cloaked scholars and potion-smudged apprentices, had gone still at her arrival. Witches peered from archways and window alcoves. Some bowed, some muttered prayers, others simply stared as if she'd grown a second head, or worse, a crown. Kaelan walked beside her in silence, but Talia could feel the storm building inside him. His wolf nature hated attention, hated spectacle, yet he never left her side. She wasn't sure whether to be grateful or guilty. At the court center stood the high crescent arena Ataring amphitheater, once used for celestial duels, divine debates, and very polite assassination attempts. Today, it was reactivated for a singular purpose: judgment. Witchling Talia Fernbrooke intoned the herald, her voice echoing magically across the chambers. Bearer of the moonmark, survivor of Solmaris, suspected reincarnation of Esaloon, and instigator of heretical revelations. Talia groaned inwardly. You are hereby summoned to answer for your deeds before the Witch Council, to affirm or refute your claim as the moon's light. The murmurs from the surrounding seats were immediate. Morel stood at the head of the tribunal, her expression unreadable. She wore her high princess garb, black silver-threaded robes and a crown of lunar thorns. Her eyes glittered, not with anger, but challenge. Do you come willingly? She asked. I came because I ran out of other places to blow up, Talia said. That earned a few nervous laughs. I'll take that as a yes, Morel replied. She stepped down into the arena and raised her staff. You defied the church. You revealed truth, long buried. And you carry a relic in your heart. The court is divided. Some call you savior. Others see you as a mistake. Talia lifted her chin. And you? I see you as unfinished. Morel's tone sharpened. Which is why I challenge you to rite of ascension. The arena gasped. Kale, and growled. What are you doing? Morel's gaze didn't waver. No heir to divinity can stand without being tested. Not in politics. Not in power. Not in truth. If she survives the rite, she earns her place. If not, the court chooses another path. You want to duel me? Talia said incredulously. I summoned a storm of butter not 2 days ago. I'm counting on it, Morel said. The rite began at twilight. The arena's center shimmered with ancient spells. For moons illusory but magically reactive floated overhead, each representing an aspect of lunar power, grace, omen, madness, and memory. Talia stepped into the circle, heart hammering. She didn't want to fight Morel. Not because she was afraid, though she definitely was, but because she liked her. In her own terrifying, politically ruthless way, Morel had become an anchor, a foil, a friend. But this was more than pride. It was legacy, and it was a trap she couldn't refuse. You can yield, Talia offered as she took her stance. Save us both a lot of magical bruises. Tempting, Morel replied, but I've been dreaming of blasting you into cream puff crumbs since Hollow Hills. A flicker of a grin passed between them. Then came silence. Then, the duel began. Morel struck first, a razor-wind sigil of pure moonlight omen. It curved through the air like a scythe. Talia ducked, rolled, and answered with a hasty bread shield, which barely held. The wind spell hit with enough force to splatter enchanted sword out across the arena walls. Delicious, Chet shouted from the stands. Morel didn't relent. She conjured a lunar chain, forged from starlight and witch steel, flinging it toward Talia's legs. Talia countered with a gust of whipped marine gale, a fluffy burst that disrupted the chain mid-air and covered 3 judges in sugary foam. Sorry, she shouted. The judges looked unimpressed. Round 2 began with a shift. Talia tapped into something deeper. She remembered Esaloon's fall, the warmth of her own divine rib, the moment she stood before the church and said, I am not yours. Magic surged. She cast moon veil, cloaking herself in flickering illusions. Morel narrowed her eyes, summoned astral ward, and fired a volley of star bolts. Talia dodged. One grazed her shoulder, scorching her sleeve. She retaliated with dream curse scatter, sending tiny glowing cupcakes filled with confusion hexes into the air. One of them exploded with glitter. Morel flinched but smiled. I see you're inventing as you go. I'm a baker, Talia said breathlessly. Improvisation is part of the recipe. Then Morel did something unexpected. She dropped her staff, lowered her shield, and whispered a phrase that only Talia heard. Do you remember yet? Talia's vision spun. The moons overhead flared. She saw Mir-El not now, but before, kneeling at Esaloon's side, a child, a disciple, a beloved student. You were there, Talia breathed. In the final hour. Mir-El nodded. I failed her, she whispered. Now I want to see if you can be more. And with that, she cast her final spell, Crescent Blood Body. The entire arena lit with a surge of mixed blood and moonlight, one of the forbidden hybrid rites. Talia's mark flared in response. Pain lanced through her rib. Magic boiled to the surface, and she chose. Instead of dodging, she stepped into the spell. Her body absorbed it, not resisting, but embracing. A fusion of memory and now, past and future, goddess and girl. Light poured from her skin. When the glow faded, Talia stood at the center of the arena, whole, glowing, breathless. And Morel lay on her knees, smiling through tears. She remembers, she said softly. She chooses. The court rose to their feet, stunned. Talia didn't feel like a goddess, but she felt real, and it was enough. They carried Morel from the arena in a bed of moonlight and applause. Talia stayed behind, still standing in the center of the high crescent arena, her palms flickering with residual power. The afterimage of her fusion with the forbidden magic lingered like silver bruises beneath her skin. It wasn't just exhaustion pressing on her chest, it was memory, too much of it. The moment she'd stepped into Morel's spell, her soul had opened, and through that opening, a saloon came, not fully, not wholly, but enough. She'd seen everything. The temples of old, the silver halls, the betrayal. She saw herself as saloon standing on the temple's highest spire, her feet bare, the stars trembling above her. The one above had offered her a crown, a chance to rule heaven, and she had turned him down. You think power is what binds the world, Saloon had said, but it is choice that makes it sacred. He struck her down that day, but before her soul scattered, she'd whispered a vow into the bones of the earth. Let me return, not as ruler, but as reckoning. Now, Talia understood, she wasn't the next Saloon. She was the answer Saloon prayed for. The moment she stepped back into the court chambers, the world shifted. Where before there had been murmurs of doubt, of fear, now there was stillness. Some witches bowed, others clutched sidles or muttered blessings. Even the familiars watched her differently, no longer as a chaotic curiosity, but as something blooming. Cale unweighted by the obsidian mirror's stare. His arms were crossed, but his gaze held something new. Worry. Talia, he said softly, stepping close. Are you still in there? She blinked, then took his hand, placed it against her cheek. I remember, she said, but I'm still me. His thumb brushed her skin. You're glowing. She glanced down, the crescent on her palm now stretched, curling toward her wrist like a blooming vine. Faint silver script lunar runes traced along her forearm. I'm not just remembering, she whispered. I'm transforming. Into what? She looked up at him. Into who I was always meant to be. The court gathered that evening beneath the open moon, each coven lighting lanterns along the floating herb gardens of the witch valleys. It was a time for naming, for renewal, for declarations. Morale stood again alive, healed, though her aura flickered with fatigue. She addressed the gathered witches with a voice like thunder in velvet. She has walked the path of power, she said. She has faced the gods, chosen her own fate, faced me, and remembered herself not as a vessel but as a wielder. Morel turned to Talia. And so we ask, what name do you take? Talia stepped forward. Her robe was simple tonight, woven mooncloth, stitched by hand. No crown, no halo, just the truth in her bones. I am Talia Fernbrooke, she said, daughter of the Hollow, survivor of fire, maker of spells and scones. The witches laughed softly. But now I claim more. She raised her hand. The crescent mark lit the sky like a second moon. I am the light bearer, she said. Not a saloon reborn, but her continuation. Not a queen, not a god. A witch who chose hope. Her voice grew steady, radiant. I do not rise to rule. I rise to remake. A new wind swept the valley. The moon shone whole for the first time in generations. And one by one, witches knelt not in subjugation, but in solidarity. Chech let out a proud honk and declared from his perch, all hail the radiant waffle witch. Talia laughed, tears in her eyes. And that night, beneath silver stars, the court of broken odes became something else entirely. A place of new vows. Later, after the lanterns had dimmed and the speeches faded, Kaelan found her alone beneath the spirit bloom trees. He said nothing at first, just sat beside her. They're going to expect you to lead, he said at last. To rise, to save. I know. And? I'll try, but not alone. Kaelan reached into his cloak and pulled out a worn moonstone medallion. I swore once to protect a goddess, he said, and that vow was broken. She turned to him, and now, he met her gaze. I make no vow now, he said, but I choose you. Talia swallowed hard. Even if I burn the world, especially if you bake it first. She laughed, then leaned in. Their kiss wasn't divine. It wasn't sacred. It was warm, real, human, and that made it perfect. Chapter 8: The Tournament of Fate. The banners of prophecy hung from the sky like the trailing feathers of forgotten gods. They shimmered in every color the pantheon once wore: silver for moon, emerald for earth, crimson for blood, and sun gold for the one above. And in the center of it all, the sky above the witch valleys pulsed with spells woven by every known magical faction, heralding the beginning of what hadn't occurred in over 400 years, the Tournament of Fate. Talia gawked at the transformed moonlight arena. What was once a sacred dual ring had grown into a floating coliseum suspended on petals of dream lilies and sky anchors. Wards hummed in overlapping layers, and spell beasts carved from music and stardust stood at the gates like ceremonial guards. "I feel like I walked into a god's fever dream," she murmured. "That's because you did," said Chech, who now wore a tiny battle helmet forged from enchanted teaspoon metal. Morel, regal in her race-own battle robes, nodded. "The tournament was originally designed to settle divine succession. But this time, it's different. This is a call to every witch, wolf, priest, and seer, not just to compete but to choose which future we believe in." Talia raised an eyebrow. "And I'm one of the contestants." "You're the main event," said Kaelen, approaching in armor trimmed with moondust and fur. His greatsword gleamed like frozen dusk. "They want to see what the Breadwitch can do under pressure." Talia winced. "Please tell me that's not what they wrote on the official roster." "Page 1, Chet chirped, "under unexpected threats. Right next to cursed jams." The opening rounds were chaotic by design. Spells flew. Familiar shrieked. APY Romancer nearly roasted a judge when her fire plume phoenix sneezed mid-incantation. One werewolf contestant, a lean woman named Bryn with glowing eyes, transformed mid-duel and then offered her opponent a flower. Talia's first match was against a grumpy sea witch named Del or Rane, who conjured tidal beasts made of salt and sorrow. Talia countered by summoning a brigade of enchanted, butter-slathered bread golems. They charged like Easty warriors into the watery storm, absorbing blows and swelling dramatically in size. El or Rane laughed so hard she forfeited the round. Talia won 3 more matches by the end of the day. She summoned a whisk storm that flung a gravity mage into a pillar of pudding. She turned a necromancer's bone hydra into marshmallow meringue, which then tried to adopt her. And during a particularly tense match against a lightning duelist, her counterspell accidentally coated the arena in hot chocolate rain. The crowd loved her, which terrified her. "They don't see me," she whispered to Kaelen between rounds. "They see an answer, a symbol, a joke, a goddess, a novelty, anything but me." Kaelen placed his hand over hers. "Then show them who you are." On the second day, the court announced a new bracket alliances. Dueling pairs. Talia and Kaelen were matched against a blood witch and a former paladin from the Sunborn or Erased range. Brutal combination. Isolde stood in the observation stands, watching with an unreadable expression. As the round began, the paladin conjured a blade of divine flame. The blood witch summoned a ritual circle beneath the arena floor, calling up tendrils of shadow blood that slithered toward Talia's boots. Kaelen moved to intercept, but Talia held up her hand. "No, let me." She whispered a spell that wasn't in any book. Lunacy's sight. The moon overhead shivered. The blood tendrils paused as if listening. Then Talia snapped her fingers, and the blood obeyed. It recoiled from her like a child caught in mischief, then turned against its caster. The blood witch screamed and fled the arena. The paladin barely had time to shout before Kaelen disarmed him with a single blow. The match was over in under a minute. The stands erupted, and Talia stood still, staring at her hand, now glowing with not just moonlight but a faint tinge of red. She yielded, Morel said that evening, voice hushed as she approached Talia in the moon garden. "She didn't need to," Talia murmured. "The blood knew me. She was channeling one of the Pantheon's relics. It should have ignored you, but it didn't." Talia's throat was dry. "Because I'm more than Esaloon now." "Yes." Morel met her gaze. "You're becoming everything she never had the chance to be." That night, dreams came, not just of Esaloon but of something deeper. She saw herself on a bridge of woven starlight, facing a mirror that did not reflect her image. Instead, it showed every life she might have lived. A baker, a hero, a tyrant, a goddess, a ghost. And then she heard the whisper again. "Choose." She reached toward the mirror, and shattered it. Talia woke with tears on her face, and resolve in her chest. This tournament wasn't about proving worth, it was about proving will. And she would win not by being a goddess, but by being Talia messy, magic muddled, bread blessed, chaos fueled herself. The final round of the Tournament of Fate was never meant to be won, at least not by mortals. The arena had shifted again. Now it was suspended in a celestial liminal space, half sky, half stardust, anchored only by the will of the tournament's still living architects, the Witch Court, the Lichen Houses, the Holy Flame Splinter Sect, and the one wild card no one accounted for, Isolde. She descended at sunrise uninvited, her robes a violent red that pulsed with a rhythm not quite alive. Blood mist trailed behind her like perfume. The moment she stepped into the arena center, the temperature dropped. "Forgive my interruption," she said with a predator smile, "but the time for theater has passed. Shall we give the audience what they really want?" Isolde Morel stood from the royal balcony, staff raised. "Please," Isolde said, lifting one graceful hand, "I come not as enemy, but as a fellow believer in change." Talia felt the warning buzz in her bones, just as Kael stepped protectively in front of her. "She's about to rewrite the rules," he growled. "Let her," Talia whispered. "I've rewritten a few myself." Isolde's voice rang out across the Colosseum. "Today, no winners, no prizes, only truth. Let the gods and their echoes rise. Let the old world fall, and let the false heirs face the pantheon they dare invoke." The sky cracked, and something ancient stirred. The moons flickered, the sun behind the clouds dimmed, and across the horizon, veils of magic ripped like paper, for figures emerged. They were not whole, not truly. They were echoes, remnants, avatars, but each bore the weight of once being divine. The Earth Father, vast and sea-ragged, trailing roots that bled sap and dash. The Sea Mother, flowing like grief in motion, her eyes blindfolded with kelp. The one above, light pulsing from hollow sockets, radiating fire that burned without heat. And Esaloon, or what remained of her, shimmering silver and silent, her body fractured into constellations. Talia's breath caught. The crowd fell to their knees, but Talia did not kneel, because as the divine echoes gathered, she felt something tear open inside her chest, not pain, but revelation. They had not come to judge, they had come to consume. Witchling, the one above, said, his voice aflame across the soul. "You carry stolen light." Talia stepped forward. "It wasn't stolen, it was given. Given by one who turned her back on her place. She chose us," Talia shouted. "She chose freedom." The Earth Father stirred, roots coiling like serpents. "Freedom leads to decay." The Sea Mother wept silently. Then Esaloon's gaze met Talia's, and in her eyes, Talia saw not a god, but a question. "Will you finish what I began?" Isolde raised her arms. "Let the trial begin." The Colosseum shattered into floating islands, pulled into a cyclone of raw power. Spectators were shielded by court magic. Contestants scrambled, wards ignited, and from the skies, the echoes of gods descended. Kael roared, shifting midair to catch Talia as a blast of astral flame nearly struck her. Talia hit the ground hard but rolled to her feet. "This isn't a tournament anymore." "No," Kael said, blood on his lips. "It's war." The Earth Father struck first, launching shards of obsidian ground at the arena. Talia responded with grain bind, pulling soil and wheat essence to slow the attack into a doughy sludge. Then the Sea Mother sang a sorrow spell that turned sound into drowning. Talia coughed, dropped to one knee. Kael struck the ground beside her, howling as a lunacy sight spell exploded in silver around them, disrupting the magic. Talia looked up and saw Isolde, watching, waiting. "You want me to rise," Talia shouted, "to become a goddess." Isolde's voice carried like wind through glass. "Because mortals will never be free until we burn the throne, and someone has to stand atop the ashes." The one above descended then, a blade of divine flame in hand, and pointed it at Talia. "You are Faksha, you are Flor." Talia rose to her feet. "I am free," and she reached into herself, not into the past but into the present, where her power lived not as prophecy, but as choice. She cast a new spell, one without a name, one made of butter and blood, light and laughter, dreams and grief. And when she flung it forward, the gods recoiled. Esaloon's echo did not fight. Instead, she smiled, and vanished, leaving only the crescent mark in Talia's palm burning with truth. The other echoes collapsed one by one, their images scattering like ash in divine wind. Isolde staggered, her expression torn between triumph and despair. "You didn't ascend," she whispered. "You refused it." Talia stood tall. "I didn't refuse, I redefined." And the arena exploded in light. When the wind cleared, the gods were gone. The floating islands had returned to earth. And Talia stood, robes torn, palms glowing, eyes wide open. She had not become a goddess. She had become real, and in that reality the world would change. Later in the quiet aftermath, Kael took her hand. "You could have taken their place," he said. "I'd rather stand beside the broken," she said, "than above them." He smiled. And in the far sky, the moons aligned whole, for the first time in memory. Chapter 9: The Choice. The stars were quiet now. Not the false hush of aftermath, but a deep, reverent stillness, the kind that came when the world itself waited to see what would happen next. Talia stood at the base of the moon spire, the tallest mountain temple in the known realms, where generations of witches once read omens from falling stars and sang the names of the gods into the wind. Now, the paths were cracked, lined with ruin, wildflowers, and prophecy fragments burned into stone. Behind her, A war-torn world staggered toward healing. Ahead, the summit called where gods had once gathered to crown rulers and curse rebels. She was neither, and both. Kaelan adjusted his cloak, eyes scanning the ridgelines. Are you sure about this? No good. You're still human. Talia turned, offering him a half-smile. You don't have to come. I do. He reached for her hand. Because if you fall, I fall with you. She squeezed his fingers. You always say the most encouraging things. Chetch landed on a nearby stone, helmet slightly askew. If anyone asks, I tried to talk her out of this. You didn't. Kaelan muttered. I thought about it, which counts as effort. The journey up the moon spire wasn't easy. The air grew thinner, laced with divine echoes and memories not entirely her own. As they climbed, Talia heard voices whispering from cracks in the stone. Lunes, a loon child of silver. But they weren't calling her that anymore. Now they said, Talia, chosen, breaker, weaver. She reached the summit just as the second moon crested the horizon, a rare celestial alignment. The sky shimmered violet blue, stars tracing invisible lines across the heavens. And there, on a dais of cracked lunar stone, lay the throne of ascension. It wasn't grand, just a wide, curved seat carved with the phases of the moon, ancient. Waiting, Talia stepped forward. The wind whispered around her. Magic shimmered at her feet. Her palms flared with radiant sidles, moon, earth, blood, even a faint touch of sea. All the powers she touched, all the legacies she could claim. And yet, she didn't set. Kaelan stood beside her, silent. She turned to him. I've been asked since the beginning to be something for everyone. The Breadwitch, the moon's echo, a goddess, a curse, a cure. Who do you want to be? He asked. She looked at the throne, then took a deep breath. I want to be choice itself. She raised her arms. Magic surged not as fire, but as light made from will. Across the world, every divine sigil glowed. The chains that bound old relics broke. Familiars lifted their heads. Werewolves howled not in rage, but in recognition. Witches across the valleys felt something in their bones, a tide turning, and far away in a crumbling temple beneath the sea, the fractured soul of the Sea Mother stirred. In the hollow heart of the Earth Father's last grove, roots bloomed, and in the ruined sanctum of the one above, the light flickered, because someone had chosen not to replace the gods, but to undo the system that crowned them. Talia turned to the wind and spoke. I will not be queen. Her voice echoed across the plains. I will not be divine. Magic flared, bright and defiant. I will be choice. I will be hope. I will be the one who said no to the throne and yes to the world. And the throne of ascension so long empty cracked. Morel arrived just in time to see it break. Her cloak whipped around her as she stepped onto the summit, breathless. You shattered it. Talia nodded. It doesn't belong to anyone being. Not anymore. The princess stared. You're insane. Probably, Talia said. But I'm free. Morel's expression shifted, then she laughed. Full, loud, honest. Then let's build something new, she said. Together. Talia smiled. Later, as they descended, Kaelan walked quietly beside her. He didn't speak until they reached the first ridge where the wind softened. You know they'll still come for you, he said. Those who want power or who fear what you've done. I know. And the people will still call you goddess. Even if you say you're not. I'll bake them a divine pie and correct them. Kaelan looked at her, then pulled her close. No one's ever done what you just did. Maybe someone had to. He brushed his lips against her forehead. They'll sing about this day. Only if the melody's catchy, she whispered. That night, around a fire in the heart of a recovering valley, Talia sat with Morel, Kaelan, and a dozen others who had chosen her not because of fate, but because she had offered a better future. No gods, no thrones, only light, bread, and hope. They began calling her radiant before sunrise, not by decree, not by doctrine, but by whispered agreement, like the world itself had breathed out her new name in unison. Not a goddess by blood, not a queen by lineage, but something rarer. A woman who'd looked divinity in the eye and said no. In the days following the breaking of the Ascension throne, the world changed faster than prophecy could catch it. Temples long abandoned and by faith lit with spontaneous flame. Familiars born without names began choosing their own. Lunar echoes threaded their way through dreams, carrying memories not of gods, but of freedom. And in the heart of the witch valleys, witches, wolves, blood weavers, and even renegade church clerics gathered beneath one banner, not of hierarchy, but of rebuilding. Talia watched it unfold with cautious awe. They keep asking me to rule, she muttered, sipping her tea beside the moon pond where the crescent lilies bloomed. Morel sat nearby, bandaging her ankle after fending off an overly amorous sun moth. They don't understand how to follow someone who won't lead from above. They want me to wear a crown. You broke the last one, Talia sighed. Can't they just elect a council? They're trying, Morel said dryly. But the Tea Witches and the Ink Sigil Guild are deadlocked on whether meetings should include scones. Talia grinned. You're kidding. I never joke about baked goods. Later that evening, a celebration broke out in the moonlit court's great hall. No formal announcement was made, people simply arrived, drawn by the strange magnetism of shared survival. Lanterns floated freely, glowing with soft moonlight. Music drifted on threads of memory. Someone enchanted the chandeliers to sparkle like falling stars. Familiars mingled with no regard for faction or species. And in the center of it all, Kaelin approached Talia with a slow, uncertain smile. You look. She glanced down at her new robe, simple, pale blue, stitched with silver thread in the shape of open hands, like someone who ran out of clean clothes. Starlight Taylor, you look like yourself. Talia swallowed. You always see me, even when I don't. Kaelin didn't say anything. He just offered his hand. This time, she took it without hesitation. They danced, not as goddess and guardian, not as witch and wolf, but as to people who had chosen each other through chaos and curse. Talia stumbled. Kaelin caught her. Kaelin faltered. Talia laughed and pulled him closer, and when the music slowed, he pressed his forehead to hers. Are you ready? He asked softly. For what? For the world to start expecting things of you again. She smiled. Let them expect. She pulled back, raising her voice just enough for those nearby to hear. I'm not a savior. I'm not a goddess. I'm not here to demand worship or rewrite fate. Someone in the crowd shouted. What are you then? She turned, hands lifted, and said, I'm your reminder that we always had a choice. They didn't cheer. They wept. And in that moment something far deeper than loyalty took root. Devotion without submission. A love not of fear but of recognition. That night as stars blossomed across the sky like the first breath of a new story, Talia slipped away to the moon pond alone. The water shimmered, showing reflections of things she had been and might yet become. Chech landed beside her, scarf slightly askew. You did it, he said. Talia didn't answer right away. She sat down on the mossy edge and dipped her fingers into the water. I didn't fix everything. You weren't supposed to. You just cracked the cage. She looked at him. Do you think she's watching? Esaloon? Talia nodded. Chech tilted his head. Maybe. Or maybe you've become the story she couldn't write. Talia smiled softly, and in the stillness the moon hole, for the first time in ages, cast her silver light down, not as a spotlight, but as a mirror. From then on, people called her a dozen names. The light bearer, the Breadwitch, Hope's hearth, the goddess of radiance, and she answered to all of them. But in private, Kaelin still called her Talia, and that she liked best of all. At the dawn of the new season, Talia stood at the head of the first council of chosen, surrounded by voices that once warden now wove together something wholly new. Not a temple, not an empire, a world not ruled by gods, but shaped by will. When she gave the opening blessing, she didn't speak in tongues. She held out her hand, summoned a single, glowing loaf of warm, golden bread, broke it in two, and smiled. Let's begin. Chapter 10. Dawning of the Chosen. The moon returned, not with fanfare, not with thunder or prophecy. It came softly, silver and round, whole, once more rising over a world that had survived collapse and found in the ruins something gentler than perfection. It found Talia. She stood barefoot in a field of night blue masters, surrounded by witches, wolves, and would-be gods who no longer believed in destiny. Only in the future they would forge themselves. The Crescent Council was held in the open this time, beneath stars, without walls, without titles. It wasn't a throne ringed by silence. It was a circle ringed by hope. And at its center stood the witch who had broken the wheel. I dreamed once, Talia said, voice soft but steady, of a world where fate didn't decide who we were. Her words rippled through the crowd. I dreamed of a world without chained gods, without cursed names, without holy wars wrapped in paper prophecies. She smiled, hands lifting. I didn't become a goddess to grant that world. I became myself so we could build it together. Behind her, Morel raised the new moon banner, a swirl of silver thread woven not into a crown or sigil, but an open spiral endlessly unfolding. Talia, the princess said, stepping forward, you refused every path offered to you, and because of that we finally have the space to make our own. The crowd erupted not in cheers, but in laughter, in clapping, in singing. Wolves howled not in mourning, but in harmony. Familiars danced, yes, even the sour ones. And for the first time in 1,000 years, magic sparked without fear. Talia wandered through the festival tents at dusk, nibbling on honeyed pear cakes and accepting flowers with awkward bows. Children had begun carving butter statuettes in her likeness, many of which exploded or sprouted wings. "I'm cursed with edible fame," she grumbled. "You're blessed with chaotic reverence," said Kaelen, stepping beside her. He traded his battle cloak for simple charcoal robes, but his silver eyes still shimmered when they landed on her. "I still don't know what to do with all this," she admitted. "They keep asking me to name a capital, build a temple, appoint a high priest of bread. I volunteer," Chech quacked from her shoulder, wearing a laurel crown of basil. Kale, and chuckled. Talia shook her head. "No temples, no crowns, just communities, councils, shared stories. If they want to worship something, let it be kindness, and second chances." Kale and tilted his head. "And what do you want, Radiance?" She paused, looked at the moons above, now both visible silver and faint gold, like twin sisters reunited. "I want a kitchen," she said at last. "A big one. For feasts, and magic, and wild, flower-dusted spells that get out of hand. And if the world knocks again." Talia turned to him, smiling like someone who had danced with gods and refused their rhythm. "Then I'll answer the door with muffins." Morel found her later by the reflecting pool, where the moonlight turned water into memory. "They want to name an age after you," the princess said. "They're arguing between the era of dawn and the radiant cycle." "Sounds exhausting," Talia replied. Morel shrugged. "You're the only one who's ever earned it." Talia nudged her. "So did you." Morel's mouth twitched. "I'm content with being the footnote who didn't kill you." They both laughed. Then Morel sobered. "It worked, you know. All of it. The witch courts are merging with the lunar accord. Even a few church branches are rethinking their doctrine." "Did we win?" "No," Morel said. "We changed the game." That night, the stars shimmered like candles, and Talia stood in the center of the gathering, surrounded by people she'd saved not by divine mandate, but by choosing them, again and again, over power, over prophecy, over fear. She didn't give a speech. She cast a spell. No fanfare, just warmth. She conjured a loaf of radiant bread, sun-kissed crust, glowing softly, infused with truth and cinnamon. She broke it in half, and shared it, with Kaelen, with Morel, with the youngest apprentice and the oldest wolf, with the sky, and for a moment, the world felt fed. In the silence after, Kaelen pressed his forehead to hers. "You remade everything," he whispered. She whispered back, "I only remembered how to begin." From that night forward, the age was not marked by thrones or wars, but by the way people lit their own lanterns. The radiant age had no ruler, only a witch with flower in her hair and stars on her hands. The world didn't end. It opened. In the weeks after the tournament, after the shattering of the throne and the return of the moons, something strange and beautiful happened across the land's magic settled into something more alive. Not ordered, not law-bound, but listening. The spells Talia cast no longer misfired her with butterstorms unless she wanted them to. Familiars no longer had to be summoned. They came when needed. Old gods stopped whispering. New spirits began to rise, made not from dogma, but from shared memory. Witch groves bloomed with wild flowers and prophetic weeds. The werewolves rebuilt their moon havens, not to guard relics, but to grow families. Even the fractured sects of the Holy Church sent word. Some had dissolved entirely, others now followed a single tenet whispered across regions: "Be kind, and do not chain what was born to choose." Talia stepped onto the porch of her new cottage at the edge of the valley. It was still a work in progress. The roof needed patching. The garden was full of unruly spell thyme, and the kitchen, overrun with sentient spoons. But it was hers. No crown, no court, no prophecy. Just a girl with jam in her hair, and 1,000 threads of magic pulsing gently under her skin. Kale, and emerged from the trees, cloaked Ost over one shoulder, carrying a woven basket full of fresh herbs and starlit tomatoes. He kissed her forehead as he passed, then leaned in to whisper, "The council asked if you'd approve a lunar envoy to the Eastern Isles." Talia made a face. "Tell them to send Chech. He's better at diplomacy." Chech, sunbathing on a fence post, didn't even open his eyes. "Only if I get to wear a sash." "You always wear a sash." "This one will say Ambassador of Snacks." Talia chuckled, pulling her shawl tighter. "Fine, one envoy, but only if he promises not to declare war over dessert disagreements." "No promises," Chech quipped. Later, under the twin moons, Talia sat beside Kaelen on the hillside that overlooked the valley. Below them, Lights sparkled, tents, kitchens, music, dancing. The new world was still raw and messy, still figuring itself out, but it was alive. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd sat on that throne, Talia murmured. Kale lay back on the grass, arms folded beneath his head. You'd be miserable. Probably. Undistant. Definitely. He turned his head. You'd still be glowing though. She grinned. You like the glow. I like you. The glow's just a bonus. She laughed, leaned down and kissed him. It wasn't fireworks or prophecy, just quiet joy. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Talia followed its arc with her eyes, then whispered the words she hadn't dared say out loud until now. I'm happy. Kale blinked. You sure? She nodded. I spent so long afraid that the power in me meant I had to be something bigger than myself, that I had to either be a goddess or be no one at all. She looked down at her hand, where the crescent mark still glowed, gentle now, not demanding. But I was wrong. I didn't have to be either. I just had to be Talia. He smiled. Flower-covered chaos witch. She nudged him with her foot. Moon-blessed wolf knight. I still haven't gotten a proper title. You're the guardian of the bread pan. I accept. At dawn, she stood at the edge of the cliff and cast one last spell, not to change the world, not to fight or defend, just to mark the moment. She lifted her hands and whispered words of her own making. Let this age begin not with a conquest, but with a table long enough for everyone. Let light be shared, not owned. Let choice be the truest spell. Golden flower motes drifted from her palms, forming a radiant arc in the sky. Below, people looked up and smiled, not in fear, not in worship, but in recognition. And so it was. The radiant aged on, not with fire, but with bread and hope and laughter. Its goddess wore no crown. Her name was Talia Fernbrooke. She was chaos-born, curse-kissed, moon-marked, but most of all, she was chosen, not by prophecy, but by herself. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and subscribe for more beautiful tales. Tap the next thumbnail to continue your journey.